Hi, my name is Barbara Ness. I live in Kings Beach, California in the county of Placer, commonly referred to as Placenine County amongst people that have had any dealings with the court system. It's also known as Mayberry RFD. The only difference was they were nice in Mayberry. It's just a basic kangaroo court in Burton Creek where the district attorney and the commissioner that runs that court make up their own rules as they go along. Many attorneys in Nevada County and Placer County refuse to take cases. They won't help people out in those if they're going to be heard under the guise of Trilla Barkey or Chris Catran, the assistant district attorney, where they make up their rules as they go. I was forced to leave my my home and my county and the state recently in the last couple of years for over a year and live elsewhere due to the continued police harassment. At one point, just a few months ago, after returning to my property, a sheriff knocked on my door, banged on my door, and my dog began to bark, and he said he was going to shoot my dog with his gun drawn out of the holster in his hand while doing a phony called-in welfare check on me. I asked who requested the welfare check and was ignored. I asked again and was ignored again. This was all very shortly after I moved back into the county. The reason that this is so peculiar, this welfare check on me, was the fact that at the time there was approximately 17 feet of snow on the side door piled up where my garage door was that I left open for my dog to enter and exit. So from the street, you could not see that my garage door was open, but obviously they were closer to my house than perhaps they should have been. Because the reason I did this is my daughter had been continually harassed by the Placer County Sheriff for filing a complaint with the sheriff, against the sheriff, and against CPS. She was more than right in doing what she did. And she was making ground, and the sheriff was very upset. They would follow her right on her tail all over town. It's a small town. They would shine lights into her kitchen window when she was doing her dishes, and it was dark outside. And it was very frightening. Ultimately, their discord with her filing, they decided to go and invade her home. They had no search warrant. They had no right to be there, but they used CPS as the guise to get into the house. I was called. She lived approximately 15 miles away from me. She called me and told me to come and get her daughter. By the time I got there, my daughter had already been taken away and arrested. And when I knocked on the door, Detective Mike Like said, "Who are you?" Because I pushed the door open. I said, "Who are you?" And he said, "Well, it doesn't matter who I am." And he pushed the door back closed on me. So I was very, very upset about this because not only was my daughter at risk, I didn't know she'd been arrested yet, but my granddaughter was. So I really pushed hard on the door, and I said, "I own this house." And he said, so he let me in. In the interim, while I'm in that house and going over to where my granddaughter is, I hear Detective Dave Hunt on the upstairs talking to a man on the phone. At the period of time, I had no idea what was going on or why he was talking to whoever he was talking to. He kept giving this man a number. It's print number such and such. It's print number such and such, right? Well, apparently this man had reported his print was stolen, and it's a very common print in the Tahoe area. He had reported it stolen. His house had been broken into. And so Detective Hunt was going to use that to go after my daughter as stolen property. When I finally left, I was allowed to leave with my granddaughter. They told me that my granddaughter was going to be taken to the receiving home in Sacramento, and I flipped. And the girl finally, the CPS worker who put this nicely, looked and dressed like a hoochie mama, told me, we better not you better just take her straight back to your house, or you're going to have those red lights and those blue lights right down on you. We're going to be coming right after you. I'm going to meet you in Carnelian Bay," which she never did. She wasn't in Carnelian Bay, but there was another CPS worker that I dealt with and was given permission to take my granddaughter, who, by the way, I actually had, I can't think of what it's called right now, but I had it, guardianship. I had legal, signed and posted guardianship of my granddaughter, and they were going to try and prevent me from taking her. Anyway, during the search and seizure, many prints and pictures were taken from that house, which actually belonged to me because I had lived in that house prior to my daughter living in it. And none of those were ever mentioned or returned. Neither was the $1,500 they took from under the sink in the bathroom upstairs in the master bath. I heard Detective Hunt say to Detective Michael Like, we're gonna get her taken care of after her making our lives miserable." The CPS worker, Amy Mueller, i.e. the Hoochie Mama, was also fired after this incident, after my complaints and complaints by my daughter. But in the interim, my daughter was arrested. They charged her, although she requested that this not be heard in Burton Creek in Tahoe City. She requested that we take it to the county seat where at least they have real judges. This farce wound up in criminal court in front of one Commissioner Trillabarkey with her attorney. Stacy's attorney was Allison Vermont, and she stood there and said, "I refuse to be heard by a commissioner. We don't want to be heard by a commissioner. We have the right not to be heard by a commissioner." And the next thing you know, this case was not dropped. My daughter wound up going to court in Roseville finally to be heard by a judge. Assistant District Attorney Chris Catran wanted to cover up the lawsuit, so this is why they went after my daughter. They went forward to see if they could get anything at all to stick, at the taxpayer's expense, I might add. This all took place because my daughter had a lawsuit against the county, and they had not one leg to stand on. In court, under penalty of perjury, Detective Dave Hunt swore he only took the one common print with a couple of others which had belonged to me, and that's all he took out of the house. However, after court that day, when my daughter and I left court, in the back of his sheriff's car, which was parked right next to me, and my daughter got pictures of, were all the other prints he removed from the house that day. All the other pictures, there was probably 10 of them, which of course we never got back. When I approached Hunt and I gave him a pretty bad time for lying under oath, he grinned at me and stated, "You know, I always tell the truth." I said, "So I imagine you don't know anything about the $1,500 either, do you?" And he just smiled at me and got in his car and drove away. Because my daughter lived with me after this whole incident, she moved in with me. She lived at my house. My house was under constant seizure, constant drive-bys with the Placer County Sheriff, shining lights in our windows. It's insane. And ultimately they went and they got it. I don't even know if they had a search warrant, but they came into our house, they searched it. Stacy had an air mattress at that particular point in time, and they punctured it with a knife and ruined it. Both of our computers were confiscated. I used mine for business. I have nothing to do. I've never been arrested. I've never been handcuffed. I've never been told I did anything wrong. I was without my computer for months, and even though I used it for business, they kept it. I kept calling. They said, "Oh, we have to run the hard drive. We have to copy the hard drive and whatever." I said, "Well, would you please do it? I need my computer back." So I waited about 4 months, and after calling Sheriff Bonner, the head sheriff of Placer County, that very day I was called and told I could pick my computer up. My computer, not my daughter's. But what did they give me? You know, the person in question. They gave me my daughter's computer, and my computer was still sitting there in the sheriff's office, and I had to go back and get that one too. This only touches the surface of what actually goes on in one of the most beautiful places in the world. As a taxpayer, I would like to now report on observations of what actually goes on in juvenile court in Placer County. And just a couple, I'd like to hit a couple more things on this Detective Hunt first. Detective Hunt has been known to proposition young girls over the years in the community, telling him he would let their boyfriends go or leave them alone or make their lives easier if they would be, quote unquote, nice to him. The other thing Detective Hunt did to me, or my son at one point in time, my son was outside working and he came by. He was outside working with a friend. He came by and he motioned my son to come over to his vehicle. My son went over and Detective Dave Hunt said to him, "If you don't get your sister to drop the lawsuit, I will get you and your girlfriend and you will all be sorry." Well, needless to say, we're all sorry. We're all sorry for him seeing to it that my daughter sat in county jail for 5 months, seeing to it that my granddaughter now has been taken away from her mother. But let me just touch on the corruption I find in the courtroom. I have sat in many a courtroom. I've become a court watcher and a child advocate. I have sat in courtrooms. I have observed these commissioners / judges make these poor parents who are shocked by what's happened, shocked that they're even suggesting that their child be taken away from them. They're forced into this corrupt cottage industry where there are attorneys, guardians ad litem, county council, bailiffs, judges, clerks, CASA workers. I've sat in the courtroom and counted 19 people for one child. And as a taxpayer of Placer County, I want to know why my tax dollar is being spent that way. I just don't have just the concern about what happens to the children, but if the taxpayers had any clue as to what these officials do, they would be appalled. I've watched a lady waiting to go in and hear my granddaughter's case being heard. I watched a woman scream in that court to the top of her lungs. I watched 2 bailiffs drag her down this very, very, very long hallway. She's dressed all nice and she had high heels on, and her mother, this woman's mother, is going, you're going to hurt her. She had operations on her arms. You're going to hurt her. You're going to hurt her. They just dragged her down the hallway. She was screaming because they were not letting her teenage son go back and be with her. So you can imagine what it would be like if you had a little child. If you had a child, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 even, being torn away from a mother that had done nothing wrong, but reported incidents to the Child Protective Society or Child Protective Services or whatever they call themselves this week. They are not protecting children. They are ruining the lives of you and me and our babies. They are allowing children to go and live with pedophiles. They know the man's a pedophile. They know the man's a kook, but they're still allowing that child to go and live with that bad, bad man who has done terrible things and has been reported. It's been reported they've done terrible things. I think I kind of got off. I just get so emotional and upset about this and seeing what I've seen. I guess I should probably get back to just the corruption in the juvenile court system and judges that make rulings, and like had been done with my son-in-law on many occasions. My son-in-law, who has basically financially ruined me. He's ruined me because I sold the home that the sheriffs came to, I sold that home to my daughter and son-in-law. And they were supposed to pay me back. Well, within 15 days of them buying the home, unbeknownst to me, my son-in-law had my daughter's name taken off of the house. So it solely belonged to him. They waited years and years. This whole thing started in '97, and until 2009, I believe it was. No, it started in 2000, and in 2009 is when the judge said he absolutely had to put the house back in my name. Well, in 2009, I broke my back. I was unable to work, couldn't qualify for a loan, and lost the property. And that was my retirement. That property, which was, it was at one point in time worth about $650,000. So the judges, by not adhering to their own rules, to their own stories that they tell you to do, to their own telling the father to be alcohol tested, to telling the father not to call the sheriff anymore, all these things are for naught. I mean, there's no point in making these suggestions, demands, rulings, when nothing at all is paid attention to. My granddaughter currently, on August 10th of 2010, had been taken away from us on August 11th, completely taken away from us to New York. The same commissioner that heard so many of these situations that had gone on between the house, my daughter, my son-in-law, allowed my granddaughter to be taken out of the state, taken away from us. And I spent every weekend with her life until that point with my granddaughter. I adore her. She is the love of my life. But this commissioner sat there and allowed my granddaughter to be taken away with a father who is a known drunk, alcoholic, DUIs. That's where she went. Not with the mother, the loving mother, who her big crime in the world is not agreeing to what CPS has decided or said, or not agreeing with the sheriff or fighting back, which is basically the way I raised her. Now I wonder if I didn't go too far or something, because that fighting back made them take our baby away. I still think I'd do it. I still think I'd fight back. I know Stacy would. My granddaughter, who's now 10, on the 10th of August 2012, just a month ago, my daughter had filed to have this ruling overturned by the 3rd District Court of California in San Francisco. And the court has ruled that CPS had absolutely no right to take my granddaughter. They had no jurisdiction to kidnap that child and place her in the hands of her alcoholic father. I was denied access to my granddaughter in this family court situation because of a CASA worker, which is a court-appointed special something. They don't get paid. They're there to help the child. Because this woman, who seemed to take a liking to my former son-in-law, and we have documentation of bribes that he gave her, i.e. Restaurant and lodging at the restaurant where he worked. My granddaughter actually snuck a copy of one of those to her mother during a supervised visit, which is all my daughters had for the last 2 years. But since they've overruled this, apparently we'll be getting my granddaughter back any moment. And this is a happy story, but this happy story at this minute has broken me financially, mentally, and physically. What they have done to my house, my family, her extended family, my sister and brother, all the people that love and adore her, her cousins, that she used to see every month or every 6 weeks. She has not seen one of them for 2 years and 2 months. And my poor daughter hasn't been able to wrap her arms around her daughter for over a year. What I would like to see is an end to the corruption in Placer County. I would like to see the sheriffs be held accountable for their actions and their activities. And I would like to say thank you very much to you, Bill, Lawless America, Windsor, for what you have done. Otherwise, we have no voice. Thank you.